It is now 11, so we're going to get started here. Thank you everyone who has joined us today for our July How to Go Solar. My name is Kate Ayers and I am the current Community Education Specialist AmeriCorps member here at Solar Oregon. Our agenda today, we're going to go over a little bit of information about how solar works. We'll then jump into the specifics on understanding, is your home right for solar? We'll then talk about the solar incentives that are available right now. And finally, we will finish with a solar story from our guest speaker, Jason Robinson. So a little bit about Solar Oregon. We are a nonprofit based in Portland, Oregon that has been working for over 40 years now on education, outreach, community work and advocacy surrounding Solar Oregon and renewable energy. Our main programs are what you're sitting on here, or How to Go Solars. Oh, I apologize for my dog in the background. We also host 2 solar tours every year. We do have our upcoming solar winery tour in the beginning of August, which will be hosted in Hood River. And we are also going to be having a virtual tour as part of that for those of us who are still uninterested in getting out with a bunch of people. Tickets are on sale now for that. And then our other solar tour is our Go Zero tour, which is being hosted in October, which features net zero or close to net zero homes. Solar Oregon also works on Solarize campaigns, which is an awesome way for a whole community or neighborhood to go solar at once. And really the core of our education is focused around peer-to-peer work and solar storytelling. If you are interested in supporting our work, Solar Oregon is a member-based nonprofit. You can become a member on our website, or if you would like to donate to our work, you can use this link, the bit.ly/solar donate, to support the work we are currently doing. I also would just like to give a big thank you to our main sponsor for this webinar, which is Energy Trust of Oregon. So a couple quick things before we really dive into the information. I'm sure all of us are very used to Zoom now, but just as a quick little refresher, please feel free to ask questions throughout the entire event by using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. We will be going over all questions at the end of this, so feel free to ask any questions that may come up. And before we get started, I do have a couple of polls that I would like to launch today. One of those polls is just understanding where you're located. So where are you tuning in from today? I will say if you're joining by phone, you will not be able to answer these polls. So I apologize for that. If you would like to send us an email and let us know, that's fine. No worries if not. But this kind of helps us gauge where our outreach is working, where we may need to do some more outreach. Thank you to those who are submitting. It looks like a lot of us are tuning in from Portland, a few from the Willamette Valley, and it looks like we even have one person who is international, which is awesome. Welcome. I am going to end this poll and move on to the second of our polls. This poll is asking you about your demographics. Please note that this poll is completely anonymous. We don't hold any of your name or information connected to this. This is really just to help us with understanding who we're reaching and to just better gauge where outreach needs to be done, what our market is like, all of that. So if you're interested in answering this, we really appreciate any information that we can get on this. Since it is a multi-question poll, I will give a little bit more time for this. So I'll give everybody about 30 more seconds. Oh, just kidding. You guys are all very quick and everybody has answered. So thank you so much for those answers. Really appreciate it. And promise this is the last one, but we are just really interested in understanding what level of familiarity you have with solar energy. So is this kind of something brand new that you don't know a lot about? Do you have a little bit of information about this? Have you already spoken to an installer, or have you already installed solar, which is awesome? So far, it looks like we have a little bit of a mixed bag here. We have some people who don't really have much familiarity with it. Some people know a little bit, and a couple people have already spoken to installers, which is great. Thank you all for being here, and I hope we can answer some of the questions you still have today. Great, so I'm gonna end this poll and we're gonna get into the information. So as I said, we're gonna just start with an overview of how does solar work. So here we have the system components of a solar system. First, you have your solar panels or your photovoltaic panels, which are usually placed on your roof. And then the sun hits those panels and creates energy, and that energy moves into an inverter or microinverter, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But that inverter or microinverter basically makes it so that the energy that is coming into your solar panels can then be converted so that you can use that energy in your home. So that energy is then pushed into your home electrical panel where you're able to use that energy. But the other part about installing solar is that upon installation, you will receive a bidirectional utility meter. So that'll be a new meter placed on your home, which will show how much energy your solar panels are producing and sending out to the utility grid, and also how much energy you're bringing in and needing to use from the grid. And this is really helpful when we look at net metering, which I will go into a little bit more in a couple more slides. So as I mentioned, inverters and microinverters are both ways to just be able to use the energy that your solar panels are creating. So inverters on the left-hand side is that white box that would just sit on your home next to your utility meter. And then microinverters are just another option. They're those small black boxes that are placed underneath your solar panels, either on every panel or every other panel to help do that conversion. Both of these options basically do the same thing and are both great options. Once you speak to your solar installer, they'll be able to tell you which is going to be the best route for you to take for your system. So your mounting options when deciding to go solar, the two most common are your roof mount, which most of us are pretty familiar with, which is just placing those panels on top of your roof. The other option that is fairly common is a ground mount. So especially if you have a little bit of extra acreage or space, or if you just want your panels to be away from your home, you can have them ground mounted like you see in this picture. The one thing that you need to take into consideration with ground mounting is that those panels still need to be connected to a utility source. And so you may need to have some extra trenching to connect all of the wires, which could be a little bit of an extra cost for the system. And so here we have net metering, which is what I talked about with your bidirectional meter and the amount of energy you're pushing out to the grid or using. So here we have a graph of two different seasons. So in the summer months, when we typically, maybe not so much this morning, but typically see a lot more sunshine, your system is most likely going to be producing a lot more energy than your home is using. And so that is where you're going to be earning some net credits of the energy that you're overproducing during that season. And so then when we go into the winter months, when we see a lot less sun, typically we're using more energy than our solar is producing. And so we're able to use those net metering credits that we stocked up during the summer. The one important thing to note here is that net metering credits go based off of the electrical season. And so net metering credits don't roll over season to season. So the credits that you build up in the summer, you do want to use those up in the winter months or when it's a little bit cloudier, just so that you're not, producing more than you can use and kind of losing that ability. So let's go into, is my home right for solar? So one of the key things here is system size. This is pretty much based on how much electricity your home is consuming. Other things to factor in is just how much available space you have on your roof, what your budget is. Typically, the average system size is about 6 kilowatts or so. And as I mentioned, it's not always in your favor to put a system in that is going to overproduce just because of those net metering credits. Another thing to consider is your solar access. So here in the Northern Hemisphere, our sun is always in that southern sky. So a south-facing roof is going to give you the best solar exposure here. But east and west-facing roofs are awesome options also, and you'll still get a lot of really good solar access. Another thing to consider is your roofing material. The two most common types are asphalt shingle and standing seam metal. Both of these are really great options. The only difference is just sometimes the way that the solar panels are installed will vary depending on your roofing material. With the asphalt shingle, there will be a metal flashing that will be placed in line with those shingles and drilled into one of your support beams underneath your roof. And then a rack will be placed on that, and your solar panels will be placed on top of that rack. With your standing seam metal, you can also have that rack option, but sometimes they will also have metal clamps that will connect right to that seamed metal to connect to those panels. Another big piece to consider is just your roof condition and age. The life left of your roof can really be a concern when installing solar. One of the main incentives available here in Oregon is through the Energy Trust of Oregon, and they do require at least 10 years of roof life on your roof to receive the incentives that they have. The other thing to take into consideration is that if you put solar on your roof and then your roof has to be replaced, you are going to have that solar company come back out, uninstall that system, get your roof replaced, and then install that back again. So it can just take a little bit more time. So we always say that a newer roof is a lot better when thinking about going solar. And then, as I mentioned, roof structure can sometimes be important when installing solar. The two main things are trusses versus rafters. And since you're getting the flashings drilled into those support beams, sometimes in rare cases, there may need to be some engineering there to just make sure that your roof structure is able to support the weight of those solar panels, but it's a really easy fix, and your installer will be able to come in and do an evaluation and understand if that's going to be necessary for your situation. So moving on, let's talk and look at some of the solar incentives that are available here in Oregon when deciding to go solar. So one of the great things about solar is that the average price has just been steadily dropping since solar has been around. That is in part due to the federal investment tax credit, which is one of the incentives that's currently available for solar. These other two are specific for Oregon, which is the solar plus storage rebate and then the energy trust incentives. So with the federal investment tax credit, you do get 26% of a tax credit on your total system cost. So that will be after everything's been installed, that next tax season, you'll file for that tax credit. It is important to note here that you do need to have tax liability to take advantage of that tax credit. The solar plus storage rebate is about up to $5,000. That funding was just approved recently this year for $10 million, which is a huge bucket. Typically, some of that funding can go pretty quickly. I know that the Oregon Department of Energy is currently working on the specifics of what that funding is going to look like for this new year. So this amount could change. So I would just keep up to date with their website or just talk to your installer because they'll have all of the up-to-date information on that. And then the last one is the Energy Trust incentive, which is up to $2,800 depending on which electrical company that you have. The one important thing to note with Energy Trust is that you do have to have Pacific Power or PGE to take advantage of their incentives. Another Energy Trust program that I just wanted to highlight today is the Solar Within Reach program, which is for low to middle income individuals. It is up to $9,000 depending on what electrical company that you have. You see here that it varies drastically depending on if you have PGE or Pacific Power. They have a lot more information on the Energy Trust website about the thresholds for households, but the household of 4 residents income threshold is $99,934. So this is a great option for that low to middle income bracket to get some extra incentive for solar. So now we just wanted to go over a little bit of a sample budget. I will say that this budget really varies. It depends completely on what your system is going to look like, what incentives are available to you, and a lot of different information. So this is completely just to give you an idea of what this could look like. Reaching out to an installer is your best bet of getting a bid for this project. So here we are starting with a total project cost of about $20,000. And so we see with that Energy Trust incentive taking off about $1,800 or the low to moderate income up to $9,000, which would bring that net cost down to $18,200 or $11,000. The ODA rebate, or that solar plus storage rebate that I talked about, this budget is a little bit older and the budget had been used up by last September. So that will hopefully change once we get the specific details of what that's going to look like, and you'll be able to get more money off with that rebate, which would take your cost down even more. But say that it ran out or you didn't qualify, you'd have that $18,200 cost, and with that 26% federal tax credit, that would bring that overall cost down to just over $13,000. And if we look at the low to moderate income, that could bring that cost down to just under $4,500, which is really awesome. So now that we've talked through some of those incentives and some of that pricing, how do we get started on this? So the first place that we suggest that you look to is the Energy Trust Trade Allies. These are all contractors that have been vetted and approved through Energy Trust. And you can go onto the Energy Trust website and go to their solar bid page and fill out an analysis and bid form that looks like this picture on the right-hand side. And that will send your information to a few different installers who will be able to give you custom bids on what they think it'll cost for your home to receive solar. And that will give you the option to kind of pick and choose who you think is going to be the best fit for you. Once you have decided on who you're going to go with, the process is usually pretty easy. Your contractor will be able to complete all the paperwork for you and get your net metering set up, and apply for all of the incentives that are available to you. Once that's all figured out, installation usually just takes about 1 to 2 days, and then your system will be in place. Your contractor will also manage all of the inspections for your system. The one thing to note here, though, is that federal tax credit is your responsibility. So your installer is not going to be able to help you with that. That's something that you will have to apply for in that next tax season. And so once you have done that, your system will be up and ready to get started and producing energy, which is great. So now I am going to move into our solar storyteller, and I would like to introduce you to Jason Robinson, who is going to share a little bit more about his experience going solar. So welcome, Jason.
Hi, should I show my video or can they
Yeah,
see
if
my
you would
video?
like to.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jason Robinson, and I'm an accountant by nature, so most of my story is going to be all about the numbers. I've looked into solar for about probably 5 years now, and it just wasn't economically feasible for us to do as a family. It wasn't until we moved recently and I was a year into my home, my current home, that I looked at it again, and it definitely made more sense. So when we had solar installed, I wanted to put more than the 100% because I knew that in the next few years I'd be getting an electric vehicle. That being said, I got bids for 110% for most of the stuff that I looked at. We looked at 6 different installers. We went with Premier Northwest because they explained the process better than everybody else to the satisfaction of my wife. She really likes to know how everything works and the details on how it's going to be installed, how they're weatherproofing it, down to what kind of tacking they use to make sure that it was sealed for every single hole they drilled in our roof. So she likes those details. I like to know the numbers. They had the best pricing for solar at the time with taking into effect the warranties. So they had a 25-year warranty with solar panels that potentially would degrade down to a 92% usefulness after 25 years. So that really sounded economical for me. And upon the installation, right before that, we discussed with them some of the things that we wanted to see in the installation of the solar, and that was making sure to take care not to damage any of our roof, no damage to our gutters because we had just moved into a brand new home, and making sure that when they were putting up ladders and everything, they weren't messing up the yard and everything like that. So they even put that in the contract to make sure that they detailed out those things for us, which was really nice. That being said, when we got the bids and then things were starting to happen with my kids, I asked to go back and put 125% solar onto my roof, which upped my payback period for 17 years. So I wouldn't see a return on my investment for 17 years, which is a long time to wait, but I have a 25-year solar panel, and it's going to continue to produce electricity even past that at 92% of its current efficiency. That to me sounded economically feasible. It wasn't going to take 25 years to pay off a thing that will only last for 25 years. At the end of it, we ended up buying an electric vehicle last year, or this last year, 2 months ago. So sooner than we thought. My kids, because of COVID, have moved back in, and we are now up to 135% of what we used to use in electricity. So with just everything changing and everything, I would look at your current usage and what you might plan for the future. 100% of your current activity is great now, but are you going to be switching things out, getting more electronics, or your kids going to move back home and start using more electricity? Were some of the things that I'm glad we installed the 125%. So we may have a small bill at the end of our process because with the net metering, last year we made it until the end of December for our bills, and we had only started collecting solar in August. So that was our first, we didn't even get the full summer's worth of net credits to last us through the winter, and we made it for 2 months. So it was January and February we had to pay into our electrical bill at about $95 a month, because we had used up all our credits from the summertime. Going forward, it looked like, well, we would definitely make so many more credits and have so much extra that we never have a bill again, except for the $12 that we pay normally just to be hooked up to the grid. But then the kids moved in, and then the electric car came into play, and now it looks like we'll again probably have to pay a little bit. But currently, the system will pay itself off, if I've done my estimates right, in about 8 to 10 years. So a lot different return on investment in that regard. And then beyond that time, beyond 10 years from now, I'll be getting basically free energy and only paying $12 a month for however long. So to me, it's a very good investment. I feel good about giving back to the environment. Finally, it's something I've looked into for a while. And if you guys have any questions for me, feel free to ask.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, for that. That's a lot of really great information. And thank you everybody for joining on. That is the end of our presentation, but please, if you have any questions for Jason or for myself, please put them in the Q&A box. We are happy to answer any questions that may have come up. So I'll give a few minutes for that. I have a question here asking, it's for you, Jason. How many panels are on your house?
29 panels. Awesome. And we have an excellent south-facing roof that gives us a potential of over 12,000 kilowatt hours per year. So
great. Sorry for my dog in the background. I have a question here that says, you mentioned that the credits have to be used up. What is the time frame, January to December? I believe that the time frame, it goes from is it March to March?
So it depends on what you, so initially it's the end of March, so April's bill, you would see that the resetting of your credits, but you can ask for different, depending on where you're at in Oregon and depending on what your needs are, you can ask your electrical company for a change in. So we changed ours to the end of February. So ours resets with the March bill instead of the April bill, because I noticed that I started getting a lot more sun there and the credits started to reset. And so it worked out better for us. Well, I should say, I'll see how well it works out. But yes, resets in March. So you see the reset on the April billing.
Awesome.
Normally with PG&E.
Perfect. Rebecca asked here, could you email the PowerPoint to my personal email to share with my spouse? Yes, I will be sending out an email following this event that will have a link to the PowerPoint, to a recorded video of this, and we will also be sending out some handouts that will have links and specific information about some of the things that we went through today. So that will be coming to you soon. I also have a question here that asks, if you are in Portland or the Portland area, what month do you start to see positive credits in the year? It's a great question. Jason, do you have any?
I'm not in the Portland area, but I'm Salem, so not too far away. And we saw a positive change in our net metering in March. So the March bill or the March area that came in April showed that we had credits available, and I had predicted that. So that's why I asked PG&E ahead of time to switch it to the month before to have our credits reset. And the fact that we had to pay in December's bill come in January, and January's bill come in February. So it was kind of the predictor. Well, we've already used up our credits. Now, when is the sun going to start shining again? And yeah, it looks like it starts to shine pretty well in March. So
great. I have a question here that's not about solar, but asked if you feel it is worth getting an electric vehicle.
So my mother-in-law lives 150 miles away. That being said, there's nothing. There was nothing on the market until Tesla came out with their Model 3 long range that could do that in one trip. So that's the vehicle we went with because of that specific reason. If you don't have any of that kind of criteria, if you're just mostly commuting, any electric vehicle out there is an excellent choice. I love not going to the gas station. I love having a full tank of electrons every single morning and being able to jet off to wherever I need to go. And we still don't even have a level 2 charger in our house. We just plug it into the wall because our commute is only 15 miles in and 15 miles back. And every single night it just regens the battery, and so we're ready to go the next day. So
perfect. I have a question here that says, in the event of a power outage, can you continue to use your own solar power for your own property? So unfortunately, no. The way that you're able to use your solar energy in a power outage is if you have a battery attached to that. And that way you're able to charge up that battery, and when you install that battery, you set up some specific sites where you want to keep the lights on or keep electricity running in the event of a power outage, and that battery will allow you to charge that in the event of an outage. Unfortunately, just solar alone, since it is tied to the grid, will not be able to power your home. And then I just have one more question here that says, I just submitted the bid request. What kind of lead time should I expect before I actually have bids in hand? And is there a long lead time for components for the system? That's a great question, Michael. I think that sometimes it can depend on the installer and how busy they are. Right now is typically a pretty busy time for solar installers just because the sun is shining and everybody wants to kind of capitalize on these summer months. So it could take a little bit longer, but typically they'll get back to you within a few weeks or so. And that's a good question about long lead time for components. I'm not sure about that right now, but I am happy to follow up with you in an email after I've done a little bit more research on that. Just after I send out the email, there will be an email address that you can respond to and just kind of remind me of that, and I'll get back to you.
So when we did ours last June, when we started looking into it, ask the people that are giving you the bids and everything, do they have the components on hand already, or do they have to order them? And ask them for the wait time. How far out are they booked till? One of the things about Premier Northwest is they were very honest with us and said that it's not going to be it's going to be a month before we get out there and do anything on your property. Well, that going forward, that it actually took them less than 3 weeks to get out here and do stuff for us. But they said they had all the components on hand already. They didn't have to order anything out. So that was one of the main factors that helped them to get to our house sooner.
Great, thank you. One more question here is, we have met with an installer. Should I tell him about the Energy Trust low to moderate income rebate? I don't think he knows about it. Great question, Rebecca. Typically, if you're in the PGE or Pacific Power area, your installer should know about that incentive. They should be up to date on that. But you can always reach out and ask them about it and talk to them about it and see if that is something that you'll qualify for. They should be super happy to help walk you through that process and look into whether or not you would qualify for that rebate.
If they don't know about it, you should be a little concerned because they haven't reached out to Energy Trust of Oregon to establish themselves as a certified installer. So that could be all.
Very
That's, yeah.
great. That's the last question that I have here. So I might just wrap us up a little bit early, but I just want to thank you again, Jason, for joining on and sharing your story and for
Yeah,
answering questions. Really appreciate it.
no problem.
And thank you everybody who joined us today. As I mentioned, you'll see an email from me later this afternoon with a recording and all of the handouts that we have available to answer any other questions that come up. But hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday.